In 1901, a group of sponge divers off the coast of a small Greek island discovered a shipwreck on the seafloor. The ship had sunk around 70 BC. It was carrying marble statues, bronze artwork, glassware, and the usual cargo of a wealthy Roman-era trading vessel. And then, one of the divers surfaced with something that did not belong. A lump of corroded bronze, encrusted with 2,000 years of sea growth. Nobody paid it much attention at first. It sat in a museum in Athens for almost 2 years before anyone looked at it carefully. When they did, they found gears inside. Not just gears. Dozens of precisely manufactured interlocking bronze gears, some as thin as 2 millimeters, arranged in a system of extraordinary mechanical complexity. The scientists who examined it refused to believe it was ancient. They assumed it had fallen in from a later shipwreck. They assumed it was a modern navigational instrument that had somehow ended up with the ancient cargo. They assumed almost anything except the truth. The truth was this. 2,000 years ago, a Greek engineer had built a mechanical computer, a device that could calculate the positions of the sun and moon, predict solar and lunar eclipses, track the cycles of 5 planets, display the Greek Olympic calendar, and model the irregular orbit of the moon all simultaneously by turning a single hand crank. This is the story of the Antikythera Mechanism. And it is going to change how you think about ancient Greece, about the history of technology, and about what human intelligence has always been capable of. Let me take you back to Easter Sunday 1900. A group of Greek sponge divers from the island of Symi are sailing home from North Africa when they are driven off course by a storm. They shelter near the small island of Antikythera, in the waters between Crete and the Greek mainland. One of the divers, Elias Stadiatis, descends to about 45 meters and surfaces white with shock. He tells the captain he has found a heap of rotting horses and dead naked women on the seafloor. He had found ancient bronze statues, and they had been down there so long they were coated in sea growth that made them look organic. The Greek government organized a recovery operation that ran for months. They brought up bronze and marble statues, coins, pottery, glassware, and extraordinary archaeological haul. And then, in May 1902, archaeologist Valerios Stias noticed something in one of the corroded bronze lumps. A gear wheel. A single bronze gear wheel, clearly machined with mathematical precision. He suggested the lump was an ancient astronomical instrument. He was largely ignored and ridiculed by other scholars, who insisted no such mechanical device could have existed in antiquity. The lump sat in the Athens National Archaeological Museum, while the academic world argued about its origins for decades. Then, in 1951, British physicist Derek de Solla Price became the first scientist to study it systematically. He used X-ray imaging to look inside the corroded mass without destroying it. What he found left him shaken. He later wrote, "It is like finding a jet aircraft in the tomb of Tutankhamun." Modern imaging technology has now given us a complete picture of what the Antikythera Mechanism actually contained, and it is more complex than anyone imagined even 50 years ago. In 2006, an international team called the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project used high-resolution X-ray computed tomography to scan every fragment. Their findings, published in the journal Nature, transformed what we thought we knew about ancient technology. The mechanism contained at least 37 bronze gears, and possibly as many as 72 in its complete state. Many of these gears had between 15 and 223 teeth, cut with precision that modern analysis has shown achieves tolerances of under 0.5 millimeter. Let me put that in context. The first mechanical clock in Europe appeared in the 13th century, approximately 1400 years after the Antikythera Mechanism was built. That first clock had a single gear train. The Antikythera Mechanism had multiple independent gear trains of extraordinary complexity. The front face showed the positions of the sun and moon in the zodiac on a 365-day Egyptian calendar scale. The rear face had 2 spiral dials. The upper spiral tracked the Metonic cycle, a 235-month period, after which the phases of the moon repeat on the same calendar dates. The lower spiral tracked the Saros cycle, the 223-month eclipse prediction cycle. And inside the mechanism, hidden within the differential gear train, was something that took modern researchers decades to fully understand. A pin and slot mechanism that modeled the variable speed of the moon in its orbit, what we now call the lunar anomaly. The moon does not orbit Earth at constant speed. It moves faster when closer and slower when farther away. The Antikythera Mechanism modeled this variable speed mechanically, using a small pin offset from the center of a rotating gear. This is not primitive technology. This is sophisticated engineering. I want to spend a moment on the precision of the Antikythera Mechanism, because I think it is the most important and most underappreciated aspect of this object. The gear teeth in the Antikythera mechanism are cut to an accuracy that requires precision metalworking tools and mathematical calculation of gear ratios. To achieve the astronomical cycles the mechanism represents, the gear ratios had to be calculated from astronomical observation and then translated into tooth counts on interlocking gears. For example, the Metonic cycle is 235 lunar months, which equals 19 solar years. To represent this mechanically, you need gears whose ratio produces this number. The Antikythera mechanism achieves this with a gear train that uses the numbers 19, 254, 127, and others in its tooth counts numbers that encode the precise astronomical ratios of the solar and lunar cycles. A 2021 study published in Scientific Reports by Tony Freeth and colleagues at University College London attempted to reconstruct the complete front gear train of the mechanism. Their conclusion: the gear arrangement encodes the planetary periods of Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, all 5 planets visible to the naked eye, to accuracies consistent with the best Babylonian astronomical observations of the era. 5 planets. Simultaneously, in a hand-held bronze device. Built 2,000 years ago. And the manufacturing precision required to achieve this tolerances under half a millimeter on gears as small as 15 millimeters in diameter was not independently achieved again in European clockmaking until the 16th century, 1,500 years later. The question of who built the Antikythera mechanism has occupied researchers for over a century. We do not have a definitive answer, but we have strong evidence. The inscriptions on the mechanism are in the Corinthian Greek dialect and reference the island of Corinth and its colonies. The Saros dial on the back references Corinthian month names. The mechanism was found in a ship that analysis suggests was traveling from the eastern Mediterranean toward Rome, possibly carrying it as a luxury gift or commission. The most compelling attribution connects the mechanism to the school of the astronomer and mathematician Hipparchus of Nicaea, who worked on the island of Rhodes in the 2nd century BC. Hipparchus was the first Greek astronomer to develop a quantitative model of the moon's variable orbital speed, the same phenomenon the Antikythera mechanism models mechanically. A 2021 paper in the Horological Journal proposed that the mechanism was most likely built on Rhodes, possibly in the workshop associated with Hipparchus or his immediate successors, around 87 BC, within 1 generation of his death. If this attribution is correct, the Antikythera mechanism represents the direct physical embodiment of Hipparchus's mathematical models. He worked out the mathematics of the lunar anomaly. Someone, perhaps his student, perhaps his successor, built a machine that made those mathematics move. The ship it was found on was likely sunk around 70 to 60 BC, carrying the mechanism as part of a cargo of extraordinary luxury items. The leading theory among archaeologists is that it was commissioned as a philosophical instrument, both a working calculator and a demonstration of Greek mathematical knowledge. Let us talk about what this device actually did. Because the list of its capabilities is genuinely staggering. You would hold it in 2 hands. It was approximately the size of a large shoebox. You would turn a hand crank on the side. And as you turned the crank, multiple displays would move simultaneously. The front face showed the current position of the sun in the zodiac, the current position of the moon in the zodiac, the current phase of the moon, the day of the year on the Egyptian 365-day calendar. The upper back dial showed the current position in the 19-year Metonic cycle, allowing prediction of future moon phases on any calendar date. The lower back dial showed the current position in the 223-month Saros eclipse prediction cycle, with a subsidiary dial indicating whether an upcoming eclipse would be solar or lunar, and whether it would be visible from Greece. On the front, a ring of colored spheres, half gold, half silver, showed the current phase of the moon. A pointer tracked the position of each of the 5 visible planets. And with a single mechanism, by turning one handle, you could fast forward time and see what the sky would look like on any future date. This is a computer. It computes. It takes an input, the rotation of the crank, and produces outputs, astronomical positions and predictions through a programmed internal mechanism. The program is the gear train. The word computer was not invented for another 2,000 years. But the Antikythera mechanism was one. Now let us talk about what makes the Antikythera mechanism not just remarkable but historically disorienting. It should not exist when it does. The history of mechanical technology in the Western world follows a reasonably smooth curve from simple tools through medieval clockwork to early modern precision manufacturing. The Antikythera mechanism breaks that curve. It represents a level of mechanical sophistication, multiple differential gear trains, pin and slot mechanisms, precision tooth cutting that the historical record suggests should not have existed until at least the 14th century. And yet there it is, in a museum in Athens, built around 87 BC. The question this raises is uncomfortable and important. How common was this technology? The honest answer is that we do not know. We have one surviving example. But the sophistication of the Antikythera mechanism suggests it was not a unique invention. It was too complex, too refined, to have been the first attempt. It implies a tradition of precision mechanical engineering in the ancient Greek world of which almost nothing else has survived. A 2008 paper in Antiquarian Horology by Michael Wright, who built a complete working reconstruction of the mechanism, concluded that the Antikythera mechanism was almost certainly not unique. It implied a broader tradition of precision instrument making in the ancient Greek world, a tradition that was almost entirely destroyed along with the great libraries and workshops of the ancient Mediterranean. We likely had this technology. We lost it, and we spent over 1,000 years rediscovering it. The research on the Antikythera mechanism is not finished. In fact, it is more active now than at any point in history. In 2016, the Antikythera expedition, a joint Greek-American underwater archaeological project, returned to the original wreck site. Using underwater robot technology, they recovered new fragments of the original cargo, including a bronze arm from a life-size statue and new small bronze fragments that may include additional mechanism components. In 2017, a new fragment of the mechanism itself was identified among previously recovered material. Analysis showed it contained a gear and inscription not previously documented. In 2021, the Antikythera research team published their complete reconstruction in scientific reports. Using the full corpus of surviving inscriptions and fragments, they proposed a front panel arrangement that accounts for all 5 visible planets, the Sun and the Moon, and demonstrated that this arrangement could be mechanically achieved using gears consistent with the fragments that survive. Their reconstruction has since been built as a working physical model. It works. Every gear turns, every cycle aligns. The eclipse predictions match historical records. The planetary positions match ancient astronomical tables. 2,100 years after it was built, a device that was dismissed as impossible is now confirmed as fully functional. And in 2022, a team of divers returned to the Antikythera wreck site and recovered additional material from a previously unexplored section of the seafloor. Analysis of that material is ongoing. There may be more of the mechanism still down there. I want you to think about something. The Antikythera mechanism was built around 87 BC. It sank around 70 BC. It lay on the seafloor for approximately 2,000 years. It was recovered in 1901. For 50 years it sat in a museum while experts refused to believe what it was. In the century since it was first properly studied, it has taken nuclear physicist X-ray imaging, high-resolution computed tomography, advanced polynomial texture mapping, international research teams, complete physical reconstructions, and return expeditions to the original wreck site to understand a device that one person or a small workshop built 2,000 years ago with hand tools. We are still not finished understanding it. And this is a device we have. One physical object in one museum that we can scan and measure and analyze. What was built that we never found? What was in the workshops of Rhodes, in the great library of Alexandria, in the schools of Athens and Corinth that was never dropped in the sea, never happened to be noticed, never happened to survive? What knowledge existed that was simply lost, with nothing left to find? The Antikythera mechanism does not just tell us what the ancient Greeks built. It tells us what was possible. And it tells us that the gap between what was possible and what survived is very, very large. Subscribe next video, how ancient Roman concrete has survived 2,000 years underwater and why modern concrete engineers are now trying to copy the formula. See you there.